Hi guys, welcome back to our channel, Bunny Recaps. Today we are going to see a 2017 released murder mystery movie called Itafaq, meaning coincidence. Two characters were suspected in a double murder case. Each tells the story from a point of view that contradicts one another. The film revolves around investigating both characters and finding out who the killer is and the motive behind it. The film begins with a car chasing scene where we see Victor, who is a popular UK-based crime novelist. He is fleeing from the police. At a point, Victor's car tumbles down and the police team surrounds the car. Clever Victor somehow managed to escape from there. Victor is seen running on the road and the police team is in search of him. The search continues for an hour. Then the rain starts falling. The police jeep stops before an apartment gate to inquire the watchman if he has seen anyone in formal suits passing by. While they were having the conversation, suddenly a girl whose name is Maya is seen running towards them and informs the police that she and her husband is been persecuted by an intruder and her husband is trapped by him back at the house now. The police team doubts that it must be Victor. They found the man of the house being killed and lying dead on the floor. Victor is seen sitting beside the corpse in a confused state. They arrest Victor and make him the prime suspect. The scene cuts to the home of an investigator whose name is Dan. He and his wife were asleep in the bed. He gets a call from his head official regarding the crime. Dan calms her and leaves for work. Dan was informed of the murder of Victor's wife and his escape from there. Following the murder of Steve, Maya's husband, the scene cuts to the crime spot, the apartment where the murder had happened. The forensic team is at work and collecting samples. Dan is examining the place. He learns that Steve was a lawyer by profession. They discuss the possibilities of how the murder would have been executed. When Dan took a vase to enact the possible happenings, he finds the bottom of the vase with blood stain and seized it for evidence. They find half-burned pictures in the dustbin and add them to the evidence samples. After leaving the crime spot, Dan went to inform his chief of the proceedings of the case. His chief has immense belief in Dan's ability and asks him to complete the case within 3 days because Victor is a citizen of another nation and thus they cannot keep him for long without any strong evidence of him being the murderer. Dan at first is hesitant, but his chief pressurized him to complete the work within the timeline. The scene cuts to an investigation cell where Victor is adjusting his shoes. Dan goes in and starts investigating Victor. He asked him why he had killed his wife in such a way that would be easy for the police to find out. He mocks him by saying that Victor should have taken his wife to any mountain resort and pushed her off the hill so that he could be left without legally getting into trouble. Victor becomes disturbed and denies murdering his wife. He recounts past events. He tells her that he arrived in India for his book launch. When he returned to the room after attending the event, he found his wife dead, fallen on the floor with blood running from her head. He said he was shocked and informed the police himself. Dan asked why did he run away from the police if he hadn't murdered his wife. Victor told him that the policemen who came to report his wife's death were suspicious of him and he heard them talking that he must have killed his wife and staging a drama now. They were speaking that this is usual happening. Victor tells that on hearing it, he panicked and tried to escape from there to get a lawyer for representing him legally to prove his innocence. Dan further inquires him why he had murdered Steve. The lawyer, Victor, pleads innocence. He tells him that he knows nothing about what had happened with Steve and recounts that after the car tumbled down, he was on a run. Being exhausted, he entered an apartment and there he found a lady locking the door. He pleaded with her to help him. She refused to let him inside the house but got convinced after Victor begged her to give a chance that would save his life. He tells that she took him into the home and offered him a phone to make a call. He tells that he found the place shattered down, probably from a fight, and he felt something unusual with her while he was making a call. The lady watched the news. The news about Victor's flight is been telecasted then. The lady, that is Maya, gets alerted and snatched the phone from him. Victor pleaded his innocence. Again Maya believed him and assured his safety. At that time someone rang the door. Maya asked Victor to hide. It was her maid and she sent her off. Dan interrupted him and asked if she had not tried to escape using the opportunity. Victor replied no and felt strange about it too. He detected that she must have murdered Steve and kept his corpse inside the bedroom before his arrival. He said he thought she was trying to help Instead, she meshed him into more trouble by pinning him for murder. An inspector arrives and informs Dan that Maya is waiting downstairs. Dan leaves to inquire Maya. On his way, he checks with the constable whether he has spoken like what Victor told. While they were examining Victor's room, the constable agrees and was embarrassed for his unprofessionalism. He asks the policeman whether Maya or Victor has any criminal records. The policeman replies, Maya hasn't had any criminal history. But Victor has a criminal case against him, registered by a man who holds Victor responsible for his daughter's death. Dan asks the police to arrange a meeting with the man. Dan inquires Maya. Maya is seen to be frightened. Dan asks her to tell him what had happened on the night her husband was murdered. He further adds that Victor is in no way related to Steve, and there is no reason for him to kill Steve. Maya tries to muster up the courage and recounts the event, which is contradictory to what Victor had told earlier. She tells that when she was setting the table, an intruder bangs at her door and forcibly entered the home. She adds that the man, that is Victor, behaved aggressively towards her. He started to threaten her with a knife and ordered her to follow his orders. When she tried to escape, she almost made it down the stairs, but he caught her and dragged her back into the home. She cries on reviving the events of that fateful night. Meanwhile, the man who lodged a complaint against Victor for his daughter's death arrives there. Dan inquires the man. He recounts that his daughter was a rape victim and Victor met them for a story. They believed Victor and supported him to make their ordeal known to the world on the condition that their identity should not be revealed. But Victor had revealed the identity of the girl in his book. Soon the media started to report on the girl and followed her everywhere for interviews. When the girl tried to contact Victor, he avoided her and didn't show any remorse for his behavior. The girl, being unable to handle the trauma, committed suicide. The man breaks and proclaims that it is because of Victor his daughter had died, and tells Dan that Victor is no less of a psycho. Dan takes note of it. Dan feels that both Maya and Victor were hiding some details and decides to investigate further. The next morning, Dan investigates Victor. He asks why he had behaved rudely with Maya. Victor denies it and tells him that he was nice to her. He adds that she was very friendly and even attended to his wounds and offered him a glass of wine. He said he was confused by her strange behavior. He had found a wallet full of cards on the floor. When he took it from the floor, Maya grabbed it at once and told that it was her husband's. Victor recounts it as when he grew suspicious of Maya. She was aware of his suspicion, and because of that, she tried to flirt with him to divert his attention. Without saying anything, Dan leaves from there. He then goes to Maya and asks whether she needs a drink. Maya becomes uneasy. Maya tells him that he has misunderstood and tells him that she offered him a drink to divert his attention to escape. She told that through the window shutter of the restroom, she saw a police jeep. She decided to throw a flashlight on the jeep to grab attention. But Victor is banging at the door outside and shouted at her to come out soon. Maya got frightened and left the restroom. Dan leaves on taking a statement. Then he inquires with two guards of the apartment who work alternatively day and night shifts. He wanted to know when they saw Steve. One said that even though his schedule ends at 8 o'clock, he leaves work at 7:40 at the night. He recalls seeing Steve entering the apartment around 7:30 p.m. He doesn't know whether he has returned after that or not. Dan asks another watchman who is in charge of night duty. The man told him that he was sick because of diarrhea and that he wasn't on shift all the time, so he didn't see Steve coming home. At that time, a constable arrives and rebukes the night watchman for making the place shabby with his dirty shoes. The watchman apologized and told it was because of the rain that his shoes were dirty. Dan goes to Maya. He inquires her. Maya tells him when Victor was torturing her, her husband Steve entered the home. Steve tried to save Maya and fought with him. Meanwhile, Maya ran out to bring policemen. Then the scene connects to the opening scene when Maya was running towards police jeep and stopped them to inform about Victor. The scene moves to the present. Maya is bursting with tears to not being able to save her husband. Dan pacifies her. Dan asked when her husband had left the home. He told that no one has seen Steve leaving home after 7:30 p.m. Maya tells that he has left home and reached after some time. She adds that Victor had entered the home when Steve was not there. When asked further why no one has noticed Steve's departure after 7:30 p.m., she pleads her innocence. Then Dan inquires people who live around Victor's room. He went to inquire the man, whose house is opposite the window of Victor's room. They told him that while he was taking pictures of his wife, he saw Victor and his wife fighting with each other. They show him the pictures, in which Victor is seen grabbing his wife's hand angrily in the background of the picture. Dan goes to Victor. Victor is sleeping in the investigation cell. Dan wakes him up and asks about his affairs. He aggravates him by asking whom else he is having affairs with, and tells it must be because of his affairs, his wife must be fighting with him. Victor denies it and tells him that he and his wife were fighting because his wife forced him to reveal the identity of the girl in his book to become famous. But Victor is unwilling to do so. Because of this, his wife got angry and started picking a fight. He said he left the place to get some relaxation and knows nothing about his wife's demise. The inspector shows up and hands over the autopsy report on the double murder. Victor's wife is said to have died a natural death. It is declared that she suffers from heart disease and was taking medication for that. After a heart attack, she must have stumbled onto a sink and fallen to the floor, whereas Steve's death is reported as abnormal. It is stated he was assaulted on the head with a vase that the team had picked up as evidence earlier. The report adds that the killer must be 6 feet high and must be a man, given the amount of damage caused. Dan confirms Victor is the murderer, and his chief has announced to the press that they caught the murderer and will be informed about the details a day later after finishing the procedures. Meanwhile, at the prison, the constables take Victor to prison. He cries that he is not the culprit. He is given food. He tries to eat it, but get nauseated. He cries in distress. He runs from there. The constables get hold of him and put him back in the prison. A detective arrived to meet Dan. He informs that he was appointed by Steve to report the activities of his wife, who is suspected of having an affair with her neighbor, Cyrus. He handovers pictures in which Maya is seen close to Cyrus. Dan inquires Cyrus. He tells that he knows nothing about Steve's murder and recounts what had happened on the night Steve was murdered. He and Maya were romantically involved and were enjoying each other's company when they heard footsteps of Steve. They pretend as if nothing had happened between them. Steve, who is aware of their illicit relationship, confronted them by showing the pictures that the detective had given. They got ashamed and admits their affair. Maya asks her husband to leave Cyrus. Enraged, Steve pushes Cyrus. He falls at the table and it's shattered into pieces. He tells that he got embarrassed and left the place. Dan then goes to inquire Maya. She recounts the same event, and when asked whether Steve had left after the incident, Maya assures him that he had left after it and came back when Victor was there. She bursts into tears and tells she must have confessed it beforehand. Now Dan goes to Victor. He cries to listen to him without leaving before he finishes each time. Dan asks him to speak. He tells that Maya assured him to be of some help once her husband reached home. At that time a man entered. She introduced a man to him as her husband. Maya mumbled something in the man's ears. Meanwhile, Victor heard the siren of the police jeep and went to take a look from the window. Accidentally he touched the keypad of the PC kept there and he saw a picture of Maya with another man. He learns that he must be the husband of Maya and not the man she introduced. If it is so, he is confused about why Maya has introduced him as husband and suspects the real identity of the man. When he is thinking about it, he was attacked by the man on his head and he fell unconscious. When he gains consciousness, he saw a dead man lying beside him. He learns that Maya framed him for murdering Steve. At that time, police reached there and arrested Victor. Coming back to the present, Victor is visibly saddened. Dan is deeply distraught by a sudden turn of events. He and the police inspector were discussing the case. He doubts that even Cyrus could be the murderer, as he is also 6 feet tall and there is enough reason of him being the murderer. When they were talking, Dan looks at his shoes and wipes the dirt. Suddenly he gets a strike of the incident. When the constable rebukes the watchman for his dirty shoes, he tells the police inspector he got a clue. He went to the place where evidence was kept. He asks the lady who is in charge of the evidence sample whether she knows when the rain started day before yesterday. She tells him that she is not sure, but it must be around 11 p.m. Dan discusses with the police inspector that if Steve had arrived home at 7:30 p.m., which is before the rain, his shoes would not be smeared with mud. If it is so, it must be Maya and Cyrus who must have murdered Steve, as Victor hadn't entered home then. If his shoes were dirty, which tells that he must have entered the home while it was still raining at midnight. When Victor was there and he must be the murderer. He went to collect the evidence. He finds the shoes clean. They visualize what must have happened. Maya and Cyrus must have murdered Steve. When Steve confronts them, they must have planned to trap Victor, who coincidentally bumps into her apartment. Maya and Cyrus have been arrested. Victor was released. Victor breaks down and tells Dan he is the one who killed his wife. Dan got shocked. Victor says that it is because of his recklessness. He missed her. Dan let his suspicious eye go off on Victor. He consoles Victor. The scene moves to Victor performing the final rituals of his dead wife. He is boarding the flight at night. Dan is seen reading a book of Victor. At his home, his wife gives him the spoiler that the lead character has killed his wife by giving her an overdose of medicine. Suddenly Dan gets a clue. What if Victor had given his wife overdosage and made her death appear natural? He checks with the doctor who had done post-mortem. He informs him that there is no such traces and gives him the bottle of medicine that Victor's wife had been taking. He accidentally dropped the pills. Dan takes a capsule and examines it. They find that each capsule consists of a drug equivalent to 3 pills. Dan learns it must be Victor who had done it to kill his wife. He rushes to catch Victor before he leaves the country. At that moment, Victor calls Dan and mocks him for failing to catch him and discloses that he is the one who had killed both his wife and Steve because his wife is disappointed with revealing the name of the rape victim in his book and started picking a fight with him. Victor tells that he tries to convince her, but she is reluctant. She vows to reveal his true face to the public. Enraged, Victor executed the plan of killing his wife. Later he learns that his wife has informed everything to her lawyer Steve, which means Steve would be a witness against his crimes. Terrified, Victor plans to kill Steve too. The scene moves to the past, where Victor is seen torturing Maya. He learns about the affair of Maya accidentally and plans to make use of it to cover his murder. He murdered Steve. When Maya runs to fetch the policeman, he exchanged his shoes with Steve's to come clean of any evidence. He half-burned the pictures of Maya and Cyrus and placed them in such a way that could grab the attention of the forensic team. He trapped Maya and Cyrus into his plans and successfully staged it. Back here, Dan is furious and vows to catch him. Victor mocks that Dan will never be able to catch him. Once the flight reached its destination, Dan rushes to the airport. Victor is seen sitting inside the plane. He is visibly nervous. His eyes are at the door constantly to check whether anyone arrives to catch him. Dan arrives at the port and asks the crew members to stop the flight. They said it is not possible. The flight has departed just now. Victor is seen smirking inside the plane. Hopeless Dan is looking at the plane taking off, worrying about his failure in catching Victor. The film ends there. If you enjoy this video, please like and share your priceless comments. It will help us reach to other movie lovers. And do subscribe to our channel for more upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.